Hello everyone, welcome to Winthrop in the World. I'm Paul Baskin, and with us today is Lee Meyer. Lee is a resident of Winthrop, and he is running for state representative against the incumbent, who is Representative Jeff Turco. We have invited Representative Turco to be on this program with you, or to tape one separately, and Representative Turco has declined to do that. So we have you with us today. Lee Meyer, thank you very much for coming on. I mean, I guess maybe one of the obvious questions that comes from that introduction is to maybe if you could just tell people why you're running for state representative and what you see as the relationship between you and the incumbent right now. Is it at least friendly enough to have discussions, or where's it at?
Well, I became a paramedic because I wanted to help people. I've seen people suffer. I had a friend, die in a car accident when I was a teenager. I was there, felt helpless. I wanted to learn how I could help in those situations and make a lasting difference in my community. So I became a paramedic. As I've been a paramedic for the last 12 years, I've seen a lot of issues, mostly poverty, especially with children and elderly, and the system keeps on, keeping debts on the working people. It's harder and harder for working people to survive. I work 2 jobs, barely can make ends meet in the second most expensive state in the country. And then seeing the federal government, how they're treating us, and looking at the state government, seeing what are they doing to protect us. I saw a lack of initiative, movement, and I wanted to help our community. So my relationship with Turco, he's the incumbent. I haven't really talked to him ever. I've seen his position on his votes, very disappointing. I don't think it represents the median Democratic voter in our district. And I wanted to get better representation that's better for the Democratic Party. I think when you look at the Democratic Party, there's a crisis of identity. What do we stand for? Walking around and telling people about healthcare, affordability, cost of living, they ask if I'm a Republican or Democrat. And I think Democrats should be known for healthcare, workers' rights, and affordability, and that's it. That should be a given that I'm a Democrat.
Right. So there's a lot of things to get into, but maybe since you headed down that direction, what would you list as maybe the 1 or 2 key votes or issues or whatever that the incumbent has taken that you feel are most objectionable or most wrong, I guess, however you want to say it, for the people of Winthrop?
Well, just recently he voted against healthcare access for women that are pregnant over 24 weeks. As a paramedic, I know pregnancy emergencies can happen at any given time, and these emergencies are tragic. They're one of the hardest calls that we have to go on and treat. These parents have prepared for someone to come into their life. They might have a nursery ready. They've had their shower, and now everything is falling apart in front of them. And I think these healthcare decisions are between a family, a woman, and their doctor. And politicians should stay out of it. That's one vote. Another vote is the modernization of gun arms, where there was a loophole where criminals could send other criminals ghost guns in Massachusetts, and he voted against that.
A ghost gun is a gun that doesn't have the serial numbers on it, or what's it?
Yeah, you can basically use a 3D printer from home, and it was illegal to possess and manufacture in Massachusetts, but right. It was not illegal to send it, and he voted against that. And as someone who works in public safety, I think that is one of the most wrong votes you could possibly do. We don't need more ghost guns to criminals. We need safer streets. Just a few months ago, there was a madman that should have been, in prison. He shot 60 shots in Memorial Drive. Okay. He could have hurt a lot of people. And we shouldn't allow, ghost guns on our street. I don't think it was a ghost gun in that incident, but it's just easier to get, criminals can get a hold of ghost guns a lot easier than registered firearms. And then lastly, he voted to give millionaires tax cuts. The people passed the Fair Share Amendment, and then this administration did do some tax cuts for the rich and the wealthy, and I don't think that was necessary. And we need to stop relying on working people for the tax base, and rely on billionaires and multimillionaires for their fair share.
Okay. What's your experience talking to voters in town? Who are you talking to? How are you talking to them? What are you hearing from them?
It's been great. Experience has been awesome. People want a working class, down to earth person that knows what it's like to suffer or at least make sacrifices. I know very well what it's like to come short on utility bills. I know what it's like to have a protein bar for dinner instead of something else because I have to send my money to Sallie Mae for student loan debt. So they want someone that's real, that's going to tell them the truth. And I've been responding to these calls. I've been seeing what emergencies people are having, seeing inside their house, seeing how they're living, talking to them on a personal basis. People want to change. That's one of the common denominator is people want to change in leadership. And I think everyone is basically, a lot of people are not satisfied with the status quo on Beacon Hill.
Yeah, okay. One thing just on the vote, so you listed a few issues, guns and abortion and women's health care. There's a group called Progressive Massachusetts that rates lawmakers, and they rate Jeff Turco like about 2/3 of the way up on the way in terms of progressive positions. Is it possible that he is progressive enough on enough things that sort of blunts the criticisms that you may have on certain things, or what? How would you sort of analyze that question?
I'm not sure if he's ranked that high, okay. But these votes at the State House, they rarely have votes. It's one of the least transparent state houses in the country. We don't see what they're voting on committee, so something could just die and go to studies, and we don't know who voted for or against. We need more transparency. We need them to actually have more votes to help working class people survive in Massachusetts. We're seeing more and more working class families leaving Massachusetts, and because the math doesn't math. It's hard to make rent, utilities, pay for food and the fuel, and then still have our wages kind of be stagnant as well.
Right. You did mention the transparency of the legislature, and obviously one of the big issues in the state is this idea of an audit. Though it seems like the legislature has been successful, I suppose, in blocking that from happening. What's your position on that, and what could be done about it?
Yeah, the legislature has been successful on protecting themselves and their interests. The people voted 72% for the audit. I'm totally for the audit. I think it's necessary. Most states audit their legislator, and we should have, we shouldn't be the last in the country in transparency. So I'm totally for the audit. I think, them trying to, another vote that he took is to gut the audit. I could put that in that list. And you're there to serve the will of the people, and him and the speaker doing us no favors by gutting the audit.
Right. What could you do about it, though? I mean, if you're one member and this is sort of the vibe of the state legislature, what could you do about it?
I mean, we do have to listen to the people. I think as one member of 140, there are people that want the audit that can't speak up because of the speaker rules with the iron fist. Right. What I've been told, and it's something that the auditor is ready to do. We can go through all the facts of it, but we should definitely do the will of the people. And I think so often our politicians on Beacon Hill just say, "Oh, they didn't know what they voted for." It's more complicated than that. Just get it done. It's about time.
So, just quickly, related to that is you mentioned the speaker and the leaders of the House and Senate on Beacon Hill have a lot of power, and that's part of what's going on.
Too much power. Yes.
Well, so I mean that worked for Winthrop's advantage for a long time too. When the speaker was from here.
Yeah, it did.
Would you support any kind of change, term limits, or anything else to sort of weaken that, or whatever word you want to use for it, that power?
Yeah, I think it's not very equal democracy when someone that's been in office for 30 years gets more because they have seniority, and then a community that continues to have different, more competitive elections, they lose out.
Yeah.
So that continues for communities that have disinvestment, and I think it's not exactly fair. But we need term limits. I think seeing how the state house is run, and our speaker's been there since 1994. That's just too long to be almost at any job, and we need like public financing. I think advantage that like Turco doesn't have to show up here because he's relying on his big money.
Right.
And when you have a war chest like he does, he's just letting his signs speak for him, and he's not coming out and being transparent, talking about why he does these votes. And so if we had public financing, it would equal the playing field, and so people have to show up and actually campaign instead of having flyers and mailers and signs everywhere.
Yeah. So you're mentioning money, and I think he has like 350,000, I believe, and you don't have that much?
No, I don't have that much.
Yeah, but it's not just that, but it's also the incumbents. Sometimes surprisingly seeing incumbents support each other almost regardless of their political positions. Are you seeing that too, and is there anything to do about that?
I mean, that's people's decisions, but I've seen that. It's been one of the most enlightening things in experience that politicians are really good at protecting their power, not really good at protecting our rights. We need to look at, people are going to keep people in power. So we see that people that are in the system keep the people that they're with in the system, and they kind of gatekeep, pull the ladder up, and it's not really good for our democracy. If your positions are, strong gun laws, positions are, women accessing abortion, health, and then that can all be negotiated away because of one person and the power that they have and the money that they have in their campaign.
But as someone who's politically progressive, hasn't the system actually worked overall for that? I mean, Massachusetts is sort of known for being almost so Democrat that it's uncompetitive, really. I mean, so is it possible that, I hear why you're saying that from your perspective could be a bad thing, but is it overall a bad thing for the system?
I mean, I think having just one party does hurt our system overall. Okay. We have a supermajority of Democrats, the executive's a Democrat, and we still aren't getting the wins that the Democratic base wants. Yeah. And so I think there becomes some cronyism. That's really what happens, is that if one party and supermajority, it doesn't get anything done for working class people, it feels like cronyism.
Yeah. I want to try and go through some issues. One of the first things I'm going to start with is Israel, which maybe doesn't seem like should be a big concern, compared to other things for the town of Winthrop, but for some reason it seems to be a big concern for the incumbent. Oh. So I'm wondering if you could maybe tell us what your take is on that situation. Is the U.S. position with regard to Israel somehow an important matter for the people of Winthrop, and should it be a factor in this race?
Well, I think it's an important matter of our history and what we're going to represent. Israel is conducting a genocide on Palestine. I just heard they did a strike today that killed 10 people, and there was a ceasefire, accordingly to the media. Yeah. And so we're seeing bombs sent from America onto tents of children in schools in Palestine. We shouldn't allow that. It's against the Leahy Act. It's against everything that we pretend to hold true to life, liberty, and happiness. So we should not be funneling money to Israel, and at the State House we should be looking into how we prevent profiteers of genocide in our state. We shouldn't let companies get enriched off of the death of children.
Okay. Another one we don't have to spend a lot of time, but it's a big issue for the town, which is 3A and housing. I guess just generally, what solution would you have to the fact that Winthrop has not complied with the 3A housing law, one, and two, maybe more importantly, what would you do as a state representative to help improve? Well, what's the quality of the relationship between the state, the town, and the state, and what as a state representative would you do to improve that quality of that relationship?
I think this is another test of Turco's bad judgment to campaign on not complying with the 3A law. We could just do paper compliance yesterday. We should be doing that. I think we should move the buildings on Governor Cliff to be what they are. They're multifamily. There's condos. They're not single families. The relationship with Beacon Hill and the governor, I guess, I don't know. She went out and said he's such an important asset, but also, there's these lawsuits about compliance. I think, it's really interesting that he said he was going to get an exemption. I don't think that's going to happen. It hasn't happened yet.
I mean, exemption to allow 3A to not be covered by the 3A law.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's imaginary. He hasn't talked about it recently, I don't believe. Right. I wish he would, because I think young families are missing out. I think people looking to Winthrop to move into this nice community see the dysfunction of the town council and the actions of the incumbent. And look, maybe this is not the great place, since they lost early education program, climate sea resilience of flooding, which is a huge issue that it's going to get worse, and we're not fixing it, and we're still having this fight. So I think it's a bad decision.
Right, but okay, I hear that. Is there a solution that you could, or is that really out of your hands as a state representative, if you were a state representative, to do that?
I think the town should go to paper compliance, and we should unlock that money that we've been ineligible to get.
Yeah, I say that. I'm just wondering what we could do I mean, that's been pushed for a while. Is there any way to make that happen? I mean, is there any middle ground? Is there anything to sort of get out of this? It's been going on for a very long time.
I think the middle ground is paper compliance.
Okay, all right. Other bills. Another bill that Representative Turco voted on was about the issue of driver's licenses. Apparently, what the bill that he voted against would have let immigrants, non-legal immigrants, what's the term, have Massachusetts driver license or identifications. The argument in favor of that was that would, well, one, help them, and two, make the roads safer by the fact that you would know that people out on the road are all licensed.
Insured.
Insured. What's your take on that?
I'm for people with statuses that aren't citizens to have driver's licenses. It helps the economy. I do believe that the people that went that route should probably get rechecked every 2 years, see how it went, see if they have any violations, are they in compliant, and just make sure this program is working well. But yeah, it unlocks people to get to jobs. And as a healthcare worker, and I work nights, I know the people that often work nights and work in healthcare that we don't see facing are immigrants, and our economy runs on that.
Yeah. And just more broadly on the question of immigrants, which is obviously a big topic, and Winthrop has a very large Spanish-speaking population in town. What, as a state representative, could you do to make anything different for their lives than the incumbent is doing?
We need to look into universal child care. That's a huge expense for all families. And if we loosen some of these expenses of child care, we can actually uplift everybody instead of doing means tests. It should be universal child care.
Where would the money, that's a very expensive thing, where would the money for that come from?
I think we should tax billionaires and corporations more. The Fair Share Act is successful, and we need to ratchet it up a little bit.
The Fair Share Act is the $1 million
millionaire
tax, which is now $2 million. Is that right? Did it get increased?
I think it's just $1 million still.
Just $1 million, okay.
But we should be increasing the rate. If it's if you have $10 million of income in a given year, I think 8% will be at least fair enough for sure.
Okay. Another issue that Representative Turco voted on was in favor of a measure to crack down on voter fraud in the state, which is something that's been talked about nationwide, this idea that there's a lot of voter fraud across the country, and there was a bill in Massachusetts to do this as well. But the other side suggests that that's really not a real threat. There's not that much voter fraud in the country, in fact. Do you have a take on that one?
Yeah, voter fraud in Massachusetts doesn't exist. There's no cases of it. Maybe one or two. They're probably mistakes, and they don't sway the outcome of results of elections. We have a great system here. I think paper ballots and getting scanned in and going and telling them your address and your name, it works just fine.
And is there a potential downside to a crackdown on voter fraud if voter fraud doesn't really exist to any significant level?
We have fraud a lot of places, and it's not in our elections, especially in Massachusetts.
But as far as a downside to doing it, what's the harm?
It's a burden. I think people can show up as themselves and be able to place a vote.
Yeah. Mass Save is a program that the state runs that takes some money, I think, from utility bills, I believe, and spends it in ways to help people insulate their homes and be, it's an issue that Representative Turco has been pretty firm on. He's against it. He believes that the program needs changes, and he voted to cut some of the money from that program. There are debates on that. I mean, in some cases, that people point out the fact that the Mass Save program maybe is a good intent in terms of helping insulate homes, but that it tends to go to people who can afford or have the wherewithal to figure out the ins and outs of the program.
Mm-hmm.
You have a take on that program and where that stands?
Yeah, that's a decent criticism of it. But for every $1 you put into Mass Save, $3 come out of it. Mm-hmm. This is a good investment. This is something that allows people to, people that have means and maybe a little bit more time to look into it can take advantage of it, which also helps everyone else because they're taking up less electricity. It's a good program. We should keep it. We should expand on it. I know the State House is looking for a way to act like they're doing something instead of touching the utility companies and their rates. Other states have looked at the rate hikes that have been going all around the country, and Massachusetts still hasn't done anything about it. And so this is one way they could say that they're doing it. But also, he has investments in Exxon and Marathon Oil.
You're talking about the state representative, Jeff Turco?
Yes. And, it's not great that our state representative has investments in these polluters. I don't have investments. I barely have savings. We need to have honest politicians that aren't self-dealing, and we need these utility companies to lower their rates or, have the consequences of, not complying and not serving the people. And they need to move towards renewable energies faster.
What's the one thing, and maybe it could be more than one, but I'm certainly going to try by asking one thing that the town of Winthrop most needs that a new state representative could bring to it that it's not getting right now?
My experience in healthcare, I think, is something that brought me to this position. When you call 911, you basically get a binary choice: go with the ambulance or stay home. And a lot of people think of the cost that goes with that ambulance ride, and then the hours that you will be in a hallway, especially at these big trauma centers. We need to figure out alternatives. It can't just be you stay home or go to the hospital. I think there's ways that we can bring in healthcare providers once someone is deemed to be stable and they're willing to stay home, and then someone can come out and do further tests instead of spending hours in the ER. And we save a bed, from someone that really needs it.
Winthrop the police are recognized nationally for their program to do some version of that, right? To sort of help people out who need help short of like an armed response, essentially. I'm trying to think of the acronym for the program in town. But do you have a take on that? And is that sort of part of the answer? Maybe that could somehow be expanded or?
Yeah, that's one part. I think, I know in Lynn, I've been participating in a program that if you're seeking substance abuse treatment or mental health, oftentimes you have to go to the ER to get medically cleared. That bogs down the ER, and we can do that kind of on the spot with some technologies that we have already and get them medically cleared, get them straight into treatment, bypassing the ER, the hospital, the ambulance trip, and get them directly in treatment.
Right. Well, first, is there anything that a state representative, I mean, I hear all that, and is there anything a state representative could do to make that happen more in the town than is happening right now?
Yeah, in Lynn, it's a pilot program. It's done on a grant. We can, file a law and debate on how to best do that.
Yeah. About half the district is Revere, is part of Revere, is that right?
Yeah.
Does that make any difference? I mean, are the demands you're hearing in Revere much significantly different than Winthrop?
The demands are they can't afford to live here. That's what I hear all the time, is that people can barely survive. It's hard to be a working class person in Massachusetts. The expenses keep on adding up, and that's what I hear all the way. And there's not enough, the establishment is not doing enough to help working class people stay in Massachusetts.
Yeah. The town is going through a review of its, I guess it's parking and congestion issues. I'm not sure what the total ambit of it is, but it's something the town struggles with in terms of being able to fit people in and by car and how to organize it, and also just generally make the town more receptive to outside businesses and all that. Do you have a take on that? I mean, when you look at Winthrop, is there something you can see when you look at it and say this is what could be done differently, and the state could help to make the town somehow more economically vibrant and to allow the number of people who maybe should or need to get into town?
Yeah. Look, traffic is a problem in Winthrop and Revere. We need to find better ways to get people around other than driving their personal car. If they felt safe riding a bike, encourage them to ride a bike. If they are flexible enough to take the ferry, take the ferry. Once they get on the ferry, have transit available for them at the marina. Incentivize people in Boston that go over to Winthrop, and maybe if you come back with a receipt from a restaurant in Winthrop, you don't have to pay your fare going back to Boston. Okay. Any type of, it's literally all of the above that we really need to work on, but we got to realize that more cars, more traffic is not always a solution. If there's other ways that people can get in town, we need to work at that.
Speaking of the ferry, the fare, as we know, on the ferry from Winthrop into downtown Boston is about twice or 2.5 times the regular subway fare. It's been talked about for a while. Something needs to be fixed. Is there anything you could suggest that you would do as a state representative to get that fixed that hasn't happened so far? Yeah,
fares in general we need to take a look at, because the ferry, it does take a little bit more, and having an increased price in that, it's a little bit justified. But we need to look at our bus system too, how it's just so much faster for people to get on the bus if they don't have to fuss with their Charlie card and this and that, and they can just get on the bus, get off the bus, and that saves minutes. And I've taken the bus a few times thinking it was a good idea, and I was late. It was very inconvenient. I had to call my employer, explain that I'm going to be late and there's nothing to do with it. And sometimes you're just sitting there, especially on the train, and you don't even know why you're there. It's frustrating. They don't tell you an update. They don't give you an ETA. Right. It drives you insane.
Yep. Also, speaking of the bus, as we know, there are 2 lines that run through Winthrop, but the plan that the MBTA announced a little while ago is to take one of the lines and run it, instead of going to Orient Heights, to go up through the northern part of Winthrop and out through Beachmont. Do you have a take on that? Does that seem like a good idea?
I think it's a good idea. I live in the Highlands. We are you have to go to Crest and Revere basically to pick up a bus, or over to Crest and Endicott. And so I think it's a good idea. People can stop off at the short beach where people can go to the beach and hang out. So I think it'd be a great idea. We need to expand bus services.
Another thing that involves state relations and has been fairly, I think, controversial in town, and also both positive and negative, is the TIPS project, which is the reconstruction of Revere Street through the middle of town, the addition of some semblance of a bike lane, although it doesn't go anywhere. Do you have any take on that project in particular, and whether that's a good model for what we should see more of in Winthrop?
It's tough because a lot of our streets are narrow as they are, and adding more lanes does complicate things, especially for emergency vehicles. And often the congestion really builds up during those school hours too. So we have to take a close look at that. But we need to use transportation, all of the above type of measure.
Yeah. So you have a net positive or negative sense of that project in particular, and again, whether it's the kind of thing that you like to see more of around town?
It's something that's probably going to be a net positive, yes.
Okay. I want to go back to we sort of get there, and then we went off to transportation a little bit, which is related, but the one thing that's made some news lately is the closing of the Ace Hardware store, the big building that everybody sees coming into Winthrop from the main route in, which is from East Boston. What does it tell us? Does it tell us that this just, as a one, I realize this, in this particular case, there's health situation, so it may be a one-off. But what do you see as the sort of overall situation with the economy in Winthrop, the mix of businesses in town, whether it's going in a positive direction or not, and what, if anything, a state representative could do about it?
I think the economy in town is stagnant and possibly declining. It's unfortunate. The closure of the hardware store is a huge hit. It hurts the heart. Hopefully it is a one-off, but it would not be surprising if it's a trend, given that Robin Egg also is closed down. We need people in Winthrop, but another problem is that the economy is so bad that people are holding on to their money. It's harder and harder to justify going out to eat when your utility bills just went up $400 a month, and your wages stay the same. So it's harder and harder to make that choice.
Yeah.
And so, I think when people have a little more money in their pocket, they're able to spend, and that would help us a lot.
Okay. We're actually out of time, but I think I can get in one more question, which is the issue of the cameras around town. There's cameras on poles around town. The police have talked about the fact that when you come in and out of town, either the two entrances, they can see every car coming in and record it. Is that a good thing overall? Because obviously around Massachusetts and the country, that this is getting a lot of pushback. But but the police see it as a very important tool. Where do you come down on it?
In theory, it's a net positive that we can see everyone coming in, coming out, and, if there's a stolen car or a wanted criminal, they're nabbed. It's great. But the downside that we see is that the backside of that, where people are abusing their power and stalking people, should be not tolerated whatsoever. They're entrusted with a ton of trust. And so we got to make sure those back-end privacy matters are dealt with, and I think the CEO of Flock is scrambling.
The company that makes a lot of these.
Because people hate it, and they're trying to delete some of their data in 7 days instead of 30 days. So the technology is good to catch criminals, but the backside of what they're doing with it, and the Fourth Amendment rights of
search and seizure?
Yeah, because they treat my license plate just like anyone else's, so it's basically a huge dragnet. So it's something that we have to debate about for sure.
One more related to that, which is there are in some parts of the country cameras all over the place that look at your speed and give you a ticket based on whether you've speeded or you've gone through a red light. There's talk of bringing that to Massachusetts. Where would you vote? How would you vote on that?
If it's going to cut down on the extreme speeders, I think we've seen some recent auto deaths, and that happens when people drive over 60 miles per hour, sometimes 80 miles per hour. If they're able to nag those drivers that are sprinting 70 miles per hour in a residential street, that's good. If it's going to ding you for going one over, and then I think that's too much. But if it's going to catch the guys that are doing the most dangerous to property and bodily harm, if they're going to catch the extreme speeders, yes.
Okay. So many more questions to ask, but we'll have to cut it off there. Lee Meyer, candidate for state representative of Massachusetts from Winthrop and part of Revere. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.